What is going on, fellow PGA DFS grinders? Brian Berryman here with you again from FantasyLabs to break down the Rocket Mortgage Classic for this week. Before I get into the model and the picks for Rocket Mortgage, I wanted to take a very quick look back at the 3M Open and how the model performed last week. We had Tony Finau and Sung J M as the top two, both in the model and in the simulations for the perfect percentage. Obviously, was a good result on that front. They did finish 1 and 2 last week. Not a total surprise. They were the best two players in the field last week, but definitely good to see that we were able to nail those results. The things that did not work out well for us, the first was obviously Hideki, not pictured here because he did withdraw, but the injury to the wrist that did have an impact on his performance. I'm not sure how legitimate the wrist injury actually was, but I watched him play. He seemed to be swinging fine. He just didn't play well and ended up withdrawing. So that hurt. That wasn't a good outcome for the model. The last guy that we did not do well on was Davis Riley. I do want to reiterate on Davis Riley and other plays like this that happen to not work out. I went back and looked at all the stats leading into last week. Davis Riley was a great fit for the course. We talked about why I thought that. I wanted to make sure that I didn't overlook anything, and I didn't. He just didn't play well. If you went back and you looked at the strokes gain data over the first two rounds, he didn't do anything extremely poorly. He had a few water balls that definitely hurt him, but he didn't lose a tremendous amount of strokes. I mean, he missed the cut by one shot, and that is just the nature of the beast sometimes in PGA DFS. Each of these golfers has a wide range of outcomes on a weekly basis. We try our best to predict who's going to be a good fit for each course, but at the end of the day, golf is a very volatile sport and it is extremely hard to predict. So don't beat yourself up too much over plays like Riley or Hideki or guys that seemingly were good on paper going into the event, but that just didn't work out. It's just the nature of the beast with PGA DFS. And unfortunately, sometimes our favorite plays don't work out. That was the case for me last week. You could make a case that Davis Riley was going over owned. The perfect percentage would back you up on that. You could see a negative 4% leverage here against the sim. But at the end of the day, he was a great fit. Statistically, it just didn't work out. So don't beat yourself up too much if you followed me down the Davis Riley rabbit hole last week. All right, moving on to the Rocket Mortgage Classic for this week. I'm excited about this event. We do have a similar setup from the standpoint that we can expect a winning score that's going to approach the 20 under range. It's going to be played at Detroit Golf Club, which is an old style golf course. A lot of very straight drives off the tee, tree line fairways, bunkers in play on a lot of these holes. But in general, the fairways are going to be pretty easy to hit for these guys this week. Not a ton of trouble off the tee. Into greens, you're going to see some crowned and elevated greens. Again, not going to be very difficult to hit these greens. There is no water. So last week, we obviously had a ton of water in play. This week, we have no water hazards. I think there's maybe one or two that come into play, but nothing like last week. So what I'm going to be focused on this week is elite scores of the ball. Again, we're anticipating the winning score being somewhere in the 20 under range. The last three winners at this event have been 25 under par, 23 under par, and 18 under par. So it goes to show you that we're going to need elite birdie makers to be adding to our lineups this week. Want to pull up a course regression analysis that I do every week using prior historical strokes gained for the individual course. We only have 3 years of data to go off of, but it's still a decent sample size. And I want you guys to focus on this top section. This is how I get a feel for which strokes gain categories are going to be most important on a weekly basis. As you can see, we have a high correlation against putting for this week. Essentially, what this graph is a correlation coefficient matrix. It's going to give us a correlation coefficient, or essentially a value that is going to tell us how correlated each strokes gain statistic is to strokes gain total for the week. This 0.648 correlation coefficient on putting is the highest I've ever seen for any course that I've run this regression analysis on. It's going to show us that putting is going to be extremely important this week, and this could turn into a little bit of a putting contest by the time Sunday rolls around. Another thing I want to point out is this strokes gain off the tee metric is a little bit lower than what I typically see for average. So what that is going to tell me is there is a variety of different ways that you can attack this golf course, but when you get on the greens, you have to make the putts. That's what I'm going to be looking for this week. So I'm not necessarily targeting bombers. I'm not necessarily targeting plotters. What I'm really looking for are guys that are going to be hitting fairways off the tee. Doesn't really matter on the distance. And the guys that are elite birdie makers, that are elite putters. That's the profile that I'm looking for. So I adjusted the model this week to account for those changes. I backed down our weightings on driving distance and strokes gain off the tee and reallocated those points to strokes gain putting and to long-term birdie scores. Again, kind of fitting back into that putters and birdie makers is the profile that I'll be wanting to target this week. So let's take a look at the model and see what those changes spit out for this week. And you can see how much the model is loving Patrick Cantlay. There should be no surprise there. He is one of the best players in the world, one of the most complete players in the world as well. And he is 5 model rating points clear of Will Zalatoris in second place, which is a pretty substantial gap. He has 5 straight top 15 finishes, elite birdie maker, great putter, should be an excellent fit for this course. I mean, he will be popular. Obviously, he's the most expensive player. Right now, I have him projected at 18%. I can definitely see that number going higher as the week progresses. So keep an eye on his ownership and determine for yourself how you're feeling with regards to how popular he's going to be and if you want to eat that chalk or not in your lineups. But I would feel pretty safe with Patrick Cantlay. Obviously, there's no guarantees, as we saw last week. Anything can happen, but he is the best player in this field at 10,700 and someone that I will be anchoring a lot of my rosters around. Next guy that I'm really liking, the model's really liking, Max Homa. He has really cemented himself as an up-and-coming elite player this year, in my opinion. He, over the last 50 rounds in this field, he ranks 6th in birdie or better percentage, 7th in strokes gained approach, and 14th in strokes gained putting. So that combination is going to give us a great profile to target for this week. Like we talked about, Max has just been very consistent, and I have him projected at 85.4 DraftKings points, which I believe is going to be top 5 for this week. At just under 10K, again, I will be rostering a lot of Max Homa this week, so long as that projected ownership number doesn't start to eclipse that 20 to 25%, then I may need to reevaluate on how much I want to play him. But keep an eye on his projected ownership as the week goes on, but is a great option for you guys this week. Last guy I want to go over that the model is really liking is Denny McCarthy. We talked about targeting elite putters of the ball. Denny is the elite putter in this field. Over every strokes gained putting sample size that I looked at, he's number 1 in this field. He is one of the best putters in the world and has been that way for a long time and has recently been trending, has some good form coming in. He has 3 top 10s in his last 4 starts, and some of those were in tough fields. I mean, we had Memorial with a top 10 finish. We had the US Open with a top 10 finish. And when his irons start to heat up like it has lately, it really is going to give him a huge leg up on the field when because he's able to putt so well. So he should be a really great fit for this week. Again, we need to keep an eye on ownership on these guys. Denny in the past has lacked some upside, so I don't know if we should be chasing chalk if he does end up being popular by Wednesday night. But right now, his ownership seems to be pretty tame, somewhere around the 10% mark. But let's keep an eye on that ownership. If he starts to get, 15, 18%, this conversation changes because Denny does rely so much on his putter historically. But from a fit standpoint for Detroit Golf Club, great fit, someone I'll be targeting in a lot of my rosters so long as the ownership stays in a range that is very palatable. Some guys that I'm going to be fading this week. The first one is Adam Hadwin. I was looking at strokes gain data a lot this week, obviously, and he just hasn't been the elite striker of the ball that we kind of caught a glimpse of in April of this year when he had some top 10 finishes. But since April, he only has one top 10 finish, and he has lost strokes on approach in back-to-back events in very weak fields. I mean, we're talking a miscut at John Deere where he lost strokes on approach, and he lost strokes on approach last week at 3M, which, again, wasn't a very strong field. So combine that with his putting woes of late. He's only gained strokes putting in 2 of his last 8 events. I just don't think he sets up that well for this course. Again, it wouldn't totally shock me if he came out and lit it up because he has that talent. But we're looking to try to predict stuff with some trending data, and he's just not trending in the right direction for me. So at 16% projected ownership at a mid 8K price point, I just will be looking elsewhere. There's other options that I like. So I will be most likely fading Adam Hadwin. Next guy is a guy we talked about last week that was featured in the plays that I liked and that the model liked was Brendan Steele. He struck the ball well again. He just could not putt, lost 6 strokes putting for the second week in a row. And I am now officially concerned about Brendan Steele's putter. When we're talking about a event that could potentially turn into a putting contest, I just have a hard time paying close to 10% ownership for a guy who has lost 12 strokes putting over the last 2 weeks. He ranks 125th in birdie or better percentage over the last 50 rounds and 144th in strokes gained putting. That combination is just not what we're targeting this week. And I will be okay if on Sunday Brendan Steele is the guy that beats me. I'm fine with that because I looked at all the data and I'm making a decision here based on where he's trending. And I just don't like the form that he is in right now with the putter. The perfect percentage looks to be backing me up on this. We have him at just about a 6% perfect percentage. And if he's going to be close to 10%, there's some negative leverage to be had there by not playing him. So I will be fading Brendan Steele this week. Last 3 guys I want to go over with you. These are not going to be the sexiest plays, but this section I want to go over some low-owned GPP flyers that could win you some tournaments. First guy is Justin Lower, 6,600. He's going to be single-digit owned, and I was targeting when I'm looking for these cheap guys. I want guys that have the upside. I want guys that have birdie-making ability, and I want good putters for this week. Again, very volatile players. These are guys that aren't going to be, I would not be recommending for cash game teams, but they do have that upside at a low price point that can unlock some salary relief for you so you can squeeze in some more certainty towards the top of your lineups. But Justin Lower, 7th in putting, 29th in birdie or better percentage over the last 24 rounds. His ball striking statistics are very, very average, but on this course layout, we talked about it, that's okay. We want some guys that can get hot with the putter and fill up some birdies. And at a cheap price point here at 6,600, he has shown some upside in the past. I mean, he got 8th at, I believe, at Barbasol recently. So we're talking about, a guy who has upside, who's going to be low owned, and he's going to be cheap at 6,600. So a good option for you guys there. Next guy, Mac Hughes. We talked about the importance of putting this week. Hughes has always been an elite putter of the ball, and he is coming in with some decent form. He's made 4 of his last 6 cuts, and when he gets hot, he has GPP winning upside. He's competed in a couple of majors when the putter is rolling for the week. If we can just get him somewhere close to breaking even with the ball striking, he should give himself plenty of good birdie opportunities. And at his $7,300 price point, projecting him to be in the single digits again, he provides some great upside for us on a course that is going to be favoring putters, as we talked about. Last guy, Austin Cook. Again, not the sexiest play. As you can see, he's pretty far down the board here on my model. But if we're talking about guys with upside, again, this is a pretty good option here at 6,400. He's made 4 of his last 5 cuts. He's gained strokes on approach in 2 of his last 3. And he isn't the longest hitter, but he keeps it in play. It's 68% of his fairways this season. 31st in birdie or better percentage, 14th in putting over the last 24 rounds. At 6,400, at a guy who's going to be 1 or 2% owned, definitely worth a flyer for this week at the lower end of the price ranges. So that'll do it for this week, guys. Really appreciate you listening in. If you have any suggestions on how to make these videos better or any segments you'd like to see in the future, please give me a DM on Twitter or drop a comment here on the YouTube video, and I will definitely give those a look. Give me a follow on Twitter. My handle is at Berryman, but instead of the B, it is a 1-3. So the handle is at 13 ERRYMAN. Appreciate follows. Any comments, like I said, just let me know. And I hope that we see you guys towards the top of the leaderboards this week. And good luck with your lineups. We will see you next week.